welcome back to the Daily Report and welcome to the Marketplace. As I hinted on earlier, we're going to be talking about manufacturing. Industrialization is so big, especially for countries that are in the lower middle income or even middle income status. Kenya is making its progress in that particular sector, but the contribution of manufacturing to the gross domestic product, it is at about 7.6%. It has been steadily declining for the past about 10 years, and it has plateaued in the recent past. In studio, we already have the Principal Secretary for the State Department of Industrialization. We want to talk all matters manufacturing so that we can get to the bottom of any particular issue that sector has been going through. You can engage with us on our socials, which are on your screen right now, or you can even call us on the number on your screen if you have maybe a cottage industry or a business that you'd like for the PS to talk about. Dr. Juma, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You have been under a number of ministers, the cabinet secretaries, especially after the Kenya Kwanza government took over. How exactly has your tenure been?
Yes, as you're aware, as a human being, you in the real world, you don't choose who to work with. But I've had very exciting moments as a PS. I've worked under three cabinet secretaries, all of them coming with different style and different enthusiasm and different energy. And for me, I think I have been more fulfilled in that process.
All right.
Yeah.
As you've said, each and every cabinet secretary does come with their own style. Each one comes with their own manifesto, their own working regime. Let's just see the most current cabinet secretary in that particular ministry. What does he have to say, cabinet secretary? That is Salim Vuria. Let's take a look.
We had a brief consultation on some of the areas that we want to do reforms. Reforms that are going to be very critical and very dear in inspiring manufacturing, investment and trade in our country. Costs and procedures remain burdensome, to trade and investment. If we look at our export performance and also in manufacturing, there are a lot of struggles.
We are in a high interest regime period. There is the issue of pending bills. We've got the multiplicity and duplicity of licenses.
Two people there, the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, Salim Vuria. And then we also have a representative from the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, that is Kigen Kiplimo, just touching on some of the issues that are ailing the manufacturing sector, some of the things that are holding this particular sector back from hitting 15%, which is the level that they want to reach by 2027, and that is the contribution to the gross domestic product. Buena PS, you have said that each and every CS comes with their own strategies. When Salim Vuria came in, he wanted to get new policies from the ground. He wanted people to give their suggestions afresh through public participation on some of the regulation changes that should be made. How did you feel about this?
Thank you, Hipak. I think let's start from the beginning. In my view, industry is so important, and many people don't appreciate this. As I've been sitting here for the last 2 years as PS for industry, I think that we need to step back and appreciate where industry is coming from, and we need to know that countries in the world are actually defined in terms of whether they are developed, developing, or poor, depending on the level of industrialization and how much industrialization is contributing to their income. And if you look back, the first industrial revolution happened in Britain in 1740. That's 300 years ago. That industrialization has then, since then, moved from Britain to the rest of Europe, to America, to China, to India, to Singapore, to Malaysia, to Sri Lanka. I think that as Kenya and as Africa, we need to really find our position within this industrialization space. And the thing to say here is that Africa, as we are talking about industrialization, there's the first industrialization that then took place in 1740. That's 300 years ago. It has spread to the rest of the world. It has, as we talk now, most of the world has done the first, second, third. They're doing the fourth industrial revolution. It's powered by ICT and computer science.
Right.
Africa is yet to experience its industrial revolution.
Right.
So as people are talking about the fourth, the question that we really need to ask ourselves is where are we as Kenya, where are we as a continent? Within the African continent, Kenya is about number 6 or 7 thereabout in terms of industrialization after South Africa. We have Egypt, we have Morocco, Algeria, Nigeria, but still our level of industrialization is still very small. It's not really powering the jobs. It's not giving us the opportunity that we need. And that's why we're here. As a government, we are really saying, how can we do better? And I think we have some work to do. That's what I would say.
All right, Bwana PS, you know, each and every cabinet secretary who did come into this particular ministry had their own, one would say, flagship, you know, role that they wanted to play. I believe the cabinet secretary, Moses Kuria, was big on KIPES and SEZs. And then we had, you know, Rebecca Miano, who really wanted to promote the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. And she was named, you know, the champion for digital trade. And now we have, you know, CS Mvurya, who's coming in and he wants to, you know, try to trigger some of these policy and regulation changes. The ministry or manufacturing has stunted for quite a while. Do you believe that this could be the changing factor for manufacturing, considering, as I've said earlier, it has plateaued in growth?
Yes, yes and no, because industry, just like any other sector, is quite complex, and you really have to appreciate and understand where it's coming from, and appreciate the opportunities that we have and the challenges that we have, and remember that all the policies that the ministers have come up with are really either opening one small window of opportunity within that space. Because when I look at industrialization in Kenya, it's not a new thing. Within the EAC, the East African Community, within the African Continental Free Trade Area, Kenya, as I've said, is about number 6 or 7 in terms of one of the most industrialized countries in the region. But we really want to look at what is it that you can do for industrialization and for you to really come up with a good policy, a good way of looking forward. First of all, you want to ask yourself, what has been our trend? How have we performed in terms of industrialization? What have been the challenges and what have been the opportunities, so that we are able to look at what is it that we are addressing? If I look back, for example, if I look at the industrialization space, I have said here that Africa, we are still struggling. And just so that I continue on that trajectory, I want to say that Africa, our 55 countries in Africa have a combined population of 1.4 billion. This is 17% of the world. But our share of manufactured products in the rest of the world is only 2.8%. So this is 17% of the world manufacturing 2.8%. Let's look at Europe. If you compare with Europe, the 27 countries in Europe, their share of the population is only 9%. But Europe contributes 24% of all manufactured products in the world, meaning that you see 9% producing 24%. But in Africa, we are talking about 17% producing only 2.8%.
Let's narrow down to the.
And if we come to the Kenyan economy, and as we come down to the Kenyan economy, some of the challenges that we have, there is a myriad of them. And some of the issues that we are looking at is in terms of market access. For example, if you look at the products that we make within Kenya, it's not possible for you to set up manufacturing that will serve the Kenyan market. And that's why I'm looking at the East African market, because Kenya has a population of 55 million. If you look at the Kenyan market, nearly 40% of what you produce in Kenya is exported to the rest of the EAC, whether this is steel, automotive, edible oil, and other things. So it means that for you to really, if you look at China, for example, they are not manufacturing for China. it will maybe make a bit of sense for you to know that if you put the total manufacturing of Africa, all the 55 countries in Africa, our manufacturing is only 10% of what China is doing.
All right.
But China is not manufacturing for itself. It's manufacturing for the rest of the world. And so part of the challenge and part of the strategy for us to develop our manufacturing is not just to look at the Kenyan market, but look at the East African market. We are looking at the African market through the African Continental Free Trade Area. If you look at it, we have worked very hard to do the economic partnership agreement with Europe, so that we are able to manufacture for not just for Europe. We are working very hard to open up the American market. So really, what I would like to say is that for countries that have developed their manufacturing, you have to look at yourself. It's not possible to manufacture for yourself and make progress. You really have to think beyond your market. So market access then becomes a big issue.
All right.
The other issue that I would like to look at is the issue of industrial spaces. So I'll not look at the county aggregation and industrial parks. The county aggregation and industrial park is a very small part of something called industrial spaces. For you to be able to plug into industrialization properly, technology is important, space is important. And in the past, everybody thought that for me to do an industry, I have to buy my land, 50 acres, I have to build, I have to bring in my machinery. Now we know that you don't need to do that. What you need, what we are doing now, the model that has come in is the idea of the industrial parks, where we develop 50, 60, 200, 400 industries in one compound. We share the power, we share the security, we share the water, because then that brings down the cost of manufacturing. And so the county aggregation and industrial parks, before I come in there, there's a lot of work that we are doing on the issue of industrial spaces. There is the export promotion zones. If you go to Athi River here, we have nearly 400 factories that are manufacturing for export under the EPZ. And also we have developed what we are calling special economic zones. Tatu City, right here in Kiambu, is a very good example. Private special economic zone. But government is also working on Dongo Kundu, for example, nearly 5,000 acres. In Naivasha, we are working on nearly 15,000 acres of a special economic zone. In Sagana, in Kirinyaga, we are working in Eldoret, in Nakuru, in Nasewa, in Busia. And what we are doing here is to create a common manufacturing facility so that we can so that people who come, you don't need to buy land, you don't need to then build the industry and then bring your machinery. You plug and play. So you find a place where we have already bought, this is mostly government land. We put up the space, we put up the industrial park. You only bring in your machinery, you play and plug. But what we have realized with the special economic zone and the EPZ is that it serves the bigger manufacturers. These are targeted for people who are targeting exports. But we realize that as Kenyans, we have an issue because Kenyans are not investing in manufacturing. So we have looked at and what are the reasons. Some of the reasons is the entry. The cost of entry into manufacturing can be very, very expensive. The cost of land, if you look at Kiambu here, an acre of land going for 200 million, there is nobody that is going to really buy land here to put up a factory.
And Dr. Juma, I believe that having the KIPES is going to solve that. But let's focus on policy and regulation, because some of the things that even Kiplimo Keegan from KNCCI was pointing out is an unpredictable tax regime, and of course the fact that we're in a high interest environment, which usually pushes out a lot of manufacturers. And you would agree with me that we're very good at formulating policies, but not very good at implementing them. How exactly is the ministry coming in, according to you?
Yes. In that area of policy formulation, it's an intricate area, because remember, we are a democracy. Many people don't understand how we arrive at the fact that this bottle of water will be taxed at 15%. Remember, as a ministry, what we do, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers has 13 sectors, whether it's automotive, whether it is agro-processing, whether it is cement, whether it's steel. what we do before any budget is made and taxation proposals are made, three things that I want to say. One, that Kenya does not have the monopoly to decide on which tax to put on that newspaper.
Right.
Because we are part of the East African Common External Market.
Right.
So we are a common market, 8 countries in East Africa. So Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, DRC, Somalia, South Sudan.
Right.
We are part of that system. And that system has a 4-band taxation regime.
Right.
And the 4-band taxation goes like this, that if you are importing raw materials to make a product within the EAC, then we charge you 0 import duty.
Right.
If you import an intermediate product, for example, if you bring a vehicle and you bring it in parts, in terms of a tire, you have a tire, you have a tire, you have a steering wheel, but you are going to put it together.
Right.
We call it intermediate product because you have developed each of those units together. Then we charge you 10%. Then if you bring a finished product into this market, for which we don't have proper enough supply, then we charge you 25%.
Right.
If you bring a finished product for which we have sufficient supply, then we charge you 35%.
Right.
Now, that taxation system is not for Kenya. It is for the East African community.
Right.
So because we are part of the East African community, we have agreed that we will have a common, that's why we call it common external tariff. So part of, when we are discussing about issues, about how do you tax sugar, how do you tax medicine, how do you tax automotive, how do you tax solar panels,
Right.
what many people don't realize is that, okay, the Parliament of Kenya has leeway, but a lot of that is already in the 4-band category.
Right.
We ask ourselves, is it a raw material? 0. Is it an intermediate product? 10%. Is it a finished product for which we have no sufficient capacity?
Right.
25%. Is it a finished product for which we don't have, for which we have sufficient capacity? 35%. So Kenya, then what we have signed up is that our tariffs are aligned to the East African community.
Right.
And then the ministry will originate proposals.
Right.
These proposals will be based on the engagements that we have with the private sector and the manufacturers, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kenya Private Sector Alliance. So we'll listen and say, what is it that Kenya wants to do for cement? What is it that Kenya wants to do for steel, for automotive? And we present these proposals to the National Assembly. And the National Assembly, before we even go to the National Assembly, the National Treasury. And the National Treasury has 2 options. Some of these will go to the East African community because there are some things that we can't really make decisions until we have agreed with what the rest of the East Africans are doing. Because remember, when Kenya makes this water, we can sell this water to the rest of the 8 countries in East Africa, and it's not an export. So if I sell water from Kenya to Uganda, to Burundi, to Rwanda, it's not an export. It is a local sale.
Right.
So the tariff that I put on this water must agree with what Uganda is saying, what Tanzania is saying. So there is a lot of space in the common external tariff that Kenyans don't understand.
Right.
But then once it's at the National Treasury, then it goes to the National Assembly. Some of I have seen people saying, okay, we don't have good taxation policies.
Right.
But if every year you are going to propose a new tax,
Right.
for TVs, for vehicles, for bicycles, for motorcycles. And this has to go to Parliament. And then when you go to Parliament, remember the members of Parliament have a free will.
Right.
They have a right to adjust, but within the framework of what you have agreed within the EAC. So part of it is that you find, okay, I say this will be 10%, it goes to Parliament, Parliament decides it's going to be 15%. So sometimes what we are saying is a stable taxation regime is really saying that the Parliament is doing its work.
Right.
But sometimes, I want to agree that sometimes that we make good decisions. Sometimes because of lack of knowledge or proper guidance, we also get a situation where we make taxes that may not be really positive for that sector.
Right.
But you see, every year we have to make new tax proposals. That's why we have a new finance bill every year. As much as you may look at me and say, that tax is bad, remember mine is a proposal.
Right.
The real maker of that decision is the National Assembly.
All right. Dr. Juma, just a few clarifying matters. The matter of contention is, of course, the unpredictability of the taxation regime, which you have so rightfully, put out that is in the discretion of the members of parliament, which keeps on changing every single year. We know that right now, the Finance Act 2023 is a matter that's being deliberated upon and it could come into action. The CS Mbadi was talking about a few changes that he wanted made in the already existing laws that could affect a lot of manufacturers who are already, getting up in defense for some of the things that they say could be punitive tax measures and punitive laws and regulations that would injure the productivity of this particular sector. As the ministry, how exactly can you cushion them? Because I assume the State Department is there for a reason. How exactly, are manufacturers going to be helped in this regard?
I think that, yes, what you are saying is correct, but also realize that this knife cuts both sides.
Right.
Quite often, when we are making policies and tax proposals, what people really pay a lot of attention to is what is negative.
Right.
And sometimes what is negative is 5%.
All right.
What is positive is 95%.
Right.
So I would say, for example, if you look at the Finance Bill 2023, we had a lot of good proposals that we had made in there that we lost.
All right.
So sometimes I think as human beings, we also tend to focus too much on what is negative.
Right.
For example, let me just give brief examples. For example, we have something called the export levy.
Right.
One of the things that we had introduced on a lot of products, 73 products actually, was to put a levy on finished products that were being imported into this country that we can make here.
Right.
So for example, textile, shoes, clothes. So we had put a 3% to say, if you are going to buy a shirt that is Kenyan made, and you are going to import the same shirt, that shirt will attract a 3% import levy.
Right.
Why? We are trying to make it so that if you are importing a shirt which we can make here, it's more expensive. So sometimes what I've seen, and I've been engaging with this with Kenya Association of Manufacturers, is that quite often we focus so much on one thing that we lose the whole baby.
Right.
You see what I mean? When I looked at the Finance Bill 2023, there were a lot, and you manufacturers are watching me here and they will agree with me, we had a lot of proposals that were really good for them.
Right. Dr. Juma, let me just
wait a minute.
Let me throw a wrench into the works. What about consumer interest? Because you take away, some of the things that they want when it comes to importation. Try to balance that out for me.
Yes, we try to do that, but remember, let me just take you back to 1991. When Kenya was developing something called the Nyayo Pioneer, the Kenyan car, India was struggling to make the Mahindra, the smoking one. We were all laughing at the Indian car because it was smoking. But the Kenyans were laughing at the car. And one of the things we were asking ourselves as Kenya is, can Kenya really make a car? So no, India persisted. Today, in 2024, our Nyayo Pioneer, which was done by our second president, Daniel Arap Moi, we laughed at it. We didn't develop it. We thought we didn't have the capacity. So the Nyayo Pioneer is where it was in 1991.
Right.
The Mahindra is a global brand. What I'm trying to say is this. Consumer protection is very important. But at some point, for you to grow your industries and to grow your products and to create confidence in your products, there must be a sacrifice.
Right.
So there's no way you're going to develop products which you don't believe in. And this, I want to talk to the rest of Kenyans, that if you really want to grow your economy, and many times we talk about cost of living, and I say, it is very, very important that we focus on that.
Right.
You cannot talk about the cost of living if you are consuming somebody else's products.
All right.
The problem with Kenya is this. You consume what you don't produce, and you produce what you don't consume. And when we produce a Kenyan product, you don't promote it. We have this idea that something that is imported, something foreign, this shoe, this cloth, this is better. Remember, if every time you import a product, you export a job. There's somebody sitting somewhere in China, in India, producing that product for you.
Right.
So if you import a product, you have already exported a job. And then now, the challenge that I have with you, and I want you to really focus on this, is after you have exported a job, you've bought, I mean, we are talking, let's take a look at the Kenyan economy. You're importing 80%, you're producing 20%. Then you want to talk about a cost of living. How do me and you probably discuss the cost of living when we are exporting all the jobs that we need?
Right.
So there must be a level of patriotism for us to grow our industries.
Right. Dr. Juma, I will be indulging in that right after this break because we need to take a break right now. When we come back, we touch on consumer interest. Don't go too far. We'll be right back.